Thomas Whitmore collected broken watches. Not expensive ones, cheap drugstore timepieces that people threw away when the batteries died. He'd repair them in his garage workshop in Boise, Idaho, then leave them on park benches with little notes. Time still matters. Someone loves you. Neighbors thought it eccentric but harmless. In August 1989, the 42-year-old high school custodian disappeared after his night shift. He left behind a workbench covered in tiny gears, a wife who'd just learned she was pregnant, and a daughter who still checked park benches for watches 20 years later. For 33 years, Thomas's wife Eleanor kept his workshop exactly as he'd left it. Tools arranged by size, a half-repaired Timex frozen at 11:47, the smell of machine oil and patience. Their daughter Rebecca, born 3 months after he vanished, grew up studying photos of a father who was more ghost than memory. Then, in 2022, a detective who understood the weight of absence, who'd lost her own father to a different kind of silence, pulled Thomas's file from the archives. What advanced imaging technology revealed about someone who'd stood beside Eleanor at the search parties, who'd helped organize the vigils, who'd been part of their inner circle, would prove that sometimes the cruelest betrayals wear the kindest masks. This is a story about how ordinary goodness can make someone dangerous, how families build lives around empty spaces, and how truth, even terrible truth, is better than wondering forever. It's about the people who keep hoping, who refuse to believe that love simply vanishes, who wait. If you're moved by stories of families who never gave up hope, please subscribe. Your support helps me honor these cases with the time and care they deserve. Detective Maya Patel kept a photograph tucked in her desk drawer, not of a victim, but of her father at 45, grinning beside his fishing boat. He'd died of a sudden heart attack when she was 16, mid-sentence, no warning, no goodbye. The waiting for him to wake up in that hospital room for a miracle that never came taught Maya something about families frozen in uncertainty. That's why cold cases called to her. On a Tuesday in March 2022, Maya sat in the Boise Police Department's climate-controlled archives, surrounded by boxes labeled with decades-old dates. She was looking for something else entirely when she found Thomas Whitmore's file. The first photo stopped her. A middle-aged man with gentle eyes, holding a watch up to the light, completely absorbed. The second photo broke her heart. His pregnant wife at a press conference, one hand protective over her belly, reading a statement in a voice that kept fracturing. Maya pulled the entire file. Sometimes a case chooses you. The investigation had been thorough in 1989. Thomas was well liked, had no enemies, no financial troubles, no secret vices. He simply finished his custodial shift at Boise High School at 11 p.m. on August 15th, walked to his car, and was never seen again. His 1982 Ford Escort was found 3 days later in a Walmart parking lot, locked, nothing disturbed. What caught Maya's attention was a detail in the margins. Thomas's best friend, Marcus Chen, had been the one to organize the search parties, to comfort Eleanor through her pregnancy, to become Uncle Marcus to baby Rebecca. Chen, now 68, still lived in Boise, still sent Eleanor cards on Thomas's birthday. Maya had learned to notice the people who stayed close, not always suspicious, usually just love, but worth noticing. She photocopied Thomas's ID badge from the high school. His smile was genuine, a little crooked. He looked like someone who laughed easily, who noticed when the quiet kid sat alone at lunch. "I'm going to find out what happened to you," Maya whispered to the photo. "Your daughter deserves to know her father was real. A life built on small kindnesses." Thomas Whitmore had been the kind of man people only fully appreciated after he was gone. At Boise High School, where he'd worked for 14 years, teachers remembered how he'd stay late to help students who'd been locked out of their lockers, how he'd fix the broken heater in the art room with parts from the hardware store, paid for with his own money. The drama teacher, now retired, told Maya, "Tom built the entire set for our spring musical that year. Stayed until midnight some nights, wouldn't accept extra pay. He said watching the kids perform made him rich enough." Eleanor Whitmore, now 69, still lived in the same modest house on Fairview Avenue. Maya knocked on her door on a Wednesday afternoon, badge ready, heart careful. The woman who answered had Thomas's gentle eyes, but they'd learned wariness. "Another detective," Eleanor said, not unkindly. "They send a new one every few years. I appreciate it, I do. But hope is exhausting." "I know," Maya said. "My father died suddenly when I was young. I understand that waiting and wondering are different kinds of grief. May I come in?" Something in Maya's voice, the truth of shared loss, made Eleanor step aside. The house was a museum of a marriage interrupted. Thomas's reading glasses still sat on the side table by his recliner. His jacket hung by the door. In the garage workshop, time had stopped in August 1989. "Rebecca keeps telling me to clear it out," Eleanor said, watching Maya examine the workbench. "She says it's not healthy, but it's all I have of him. This space where his hands touched things, where his mind worked. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Maya picked up the frozen Timex, still reading 11:47. "Tell me about the watches." Eleanor's face softened. "He started collecting them after his mother died. She'd had Alzheimer's, lost time, you know, lost years of memory. Thomas became obsessed with the idea that time shouldn't be wasted, that every moment mattered. He'd repair these cheap watches and leave them places with little notes. Sounds silly, maybe. It sounds like he believed in second chances. He did." Eleanor sat heavily on a stool. "I was 41 when I got pregnant with Rebecca. The doctors said it was likely our only chance. Thomas was so happy, giddy, really. He'd bought a crib, painted the nursery yellow. Then he vanished 3 months before she was born." "Tell me about that night." "I've told it 1,000 times." "Tell me once more. Sometimes we hear different things at different times." Eleanor closed her eyes, remembering. It was normal. Thomas left for work at 3. He worked the evening shift, 3 to 11. He kissed me, put his hand on my belly like he always did, told the baby he'd see them soon. That was the last time I felt whole. Did he seem worried about anything? Different in any way? That's what everyone asks. No. He was Thomas, steady, kind, a little distracted by whatever watch he was working on. Marcus came by that evening around 7, brought me ice cream because I was having cravings. We watched Cheers together. Marcus left around 10. Thomas would have been done with his shift about an hour later. Maya made a note. Marcus Chen, always close. "What about the search?" Maya asked. "Who organized it?" "Marcus did everything." Eleanor's voice filled with gratitude. "The police searched, of course, but Marcus, he's been my rock. He rallied the neighborhood, made flyers, sat with me when Rebecca was born. He's been Uncle Marcus to her for 33 years. I don't know what we would have done without him." Maya felt the familiar tingle at the base of her skull, the one that said, "Pay attention." He was Thomas's best friend? Since college. They worked together at the high school. Marcus was a biology teacher. Retired now. He's the one who's kept Thomas's memory alive for Rebecca, shows her photos, tells her stories. He's been the closest thing to a father she's known. People who stay close, Maya thought. People who insert themselves into the empty spaces. I'd like to talk to Rebecca, Maya said. And to Marcus. Would you give me their numbers? Eleanor nodded. Rebecca lives in Seattle now. She's a journalist. She's always said she'd tell Thomas's story someday, honor him properly. And Marcus? She smiled sadly. Marcus stops by every Sunday, like clockwork. You could meet him here if you'd like. I'd like that very much. The daughter, who never knew Rebecca Whitmore, answered Maya's call from her apartment in Seattle, where rain drummed against the windows like an accusation. I was born 3 months after my father disappeared, Rebecca said. Her voice had the particular resonance of someone who'd told this story often, trying to make sense of it. I've never had a memory that included him, just photographs and other people's stories. That must be a particular kind of loss, Maya offered. It's like being in love with a ghost. Uncle Marcus has been wonderful. He's told me everything about Dad, how they'd go fishing together, how Dad could fix anything, how he laughed at stupid jokes. But it's secondhand. I write stories for a living, and I can't write my own father's story because I don't know the ending. What if we could find the ending? Rebecca was quiet. Maya heard her breathing, considering. I've learned not to hope too much, Detective. Hope is heavy when you carry it for 33 years. I understand, but I want to try. Can you tell me about the last time you talked to Marcus about your father? Last month. He calls on the 15th of every month, the anniversary date. He never forgets. We talk about Dad, about memories. Marcus remembers everything. It's like he's keeping Dad alive for me. Red flag, Maya thought. Or just love. Has Marcus ever seemed uncomfortable talking about that night? No. Why? You don't think Marcus... Rebecca's voice sharpened. Marcus has been there for us forever. He's family. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just trying to understand the full picture. But Rebecca had gone quiet, protective. Marcus loved my father. He's loved us. He's been the only father figure I've ever had. Please don't turn this into something ugly. That's not my intention. I just want the truth. The truth is that someone took my father from me before I could know him. The truth is that my mother had to raise me alone, that I grew up with an empty space where a dad should have been. The truth is that whoever did this stole my entire childhood. Rebecca started crying. Not soft tears, but the kind that come from a grief so old it's become part of your skeleton. I'm sorry, she said. It's just, I'm 43 years old, and I still have a daughter's grief. Will that ever end? I don't know, Maya said honestly. But maybe knowing what happened would change how you carry it. Maybe, Rebecca whispered. Or maybe it would just be a different kind of heavy. The friend who stayed too close. Maya met Marcus Chen at Eleanor's house the following Sunday. He arrived at exactly 2 p.m., carrying grocery bags, staples for Eleanor, nothing fancy, just the steady care of decades. He was 68, but moved with vigor, his handshake firm, his smile warm. Detective Patel, he said. Eleanor told me you're looking into Thomas again. I appreciate it. That man was my brother in every way that mattered. They sat in Eleanor's living room, tea growing cold as Marcus talked about Thomas. His stories were detailed, specific, full of the small moments that constitute a friendship. Fishing trips to Payette Lake, late-night conversations about philosophy and fatherhood, Thomas's excitement about becoming a dad. I've never understood it, Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. Tom had no enemies. Everyone loved him. Who would want to hurt someone so good? Sometimes, Maya said carefully, the people closest to victims can remember details that didn't seem important at the time. Can you walk me through that day? August 15th, 1989. Marcus didn't hesitate, didn't need to search his memory. I visited Eleanor that evening around 7. Thomas was at work. We watched TV. I stayed until about 10. Thomas would have finished his shift around 11. His car was found 3 days later, but no Thomas. His eyes welled. I've replayed that night 1,000,000 times, wondering if there was something I missed, something I should have done. Did Thomas mention anyone bothering him? Anyone hanging around the school? No. Thomas was cautious, though. With Eleanor pregnant, he was extra careful. If something had worried him, he would have told me. Maya noticed how Marcus's left hand kept touching the arm of the chair, the same chair where Thomas's glasses still sat. A proprietary gesture, almost unconscious. You've been very close to Eleanor and Rebecca, Maya observed. That's remarkable dedication. They're my family. Marcus's voice held absolute conviction. When you love someone like I loved Thomas, you don't abandon the people he loved. It's the least I could do. Be there for his girls, keep his memory alive. The least I could do, Maya thought. Or the most. Marcus, Eleanor said softly, would you mind getting the photo albums from upstairs? I want to show Detective Patel some pictures. When Marcus left the room, Eleanor leaned forward. He's a good man, she whispered urgently. Whatever you're thinking, you're wrong. Marcus has been my salvation. I'm not thinking anything yet, Maya said. I'm just listening. But in the archives that night, Maya pulled Marcus Chen's background. Biology teacher, unmarried, no children. His entire life, it seemed, had revolved around Thomas's family. For 33 years, he'd been present, constant, devoted. Too devoted? Or just grief expressing itself as loyalty? Maya requested Thomas's car be re-examined with modern technology. The 1982 Ford Escort had been in evidence storage, untouched for decades. Sometimes, time preserved secrets. What evidence remembers the evidence technician who opened the sealed container was younger than the case. Born in 1992, 3 years after Thomas Whitmore disappeared. She handled the car's contents with the reverence of someone touching history. We've got better tools now, she told Maya. Chemical imaging that can reveal fingerprints decades old, even on difficult surfaces. If someone touched this car besides Mr. Whitmore, we'll find them. Thomas's Ford Escort had been ordinary, a working man's reliable transport. The interior still smelled faintly of machine oil and spearmint gum. In the glove compartment, registration, insurance, a small notepad where Thomas had sketched watch mechanisms. In the back seat, a baby car seat he'd already installed, ready for Rebecca. Maya photographed that car seat for a long time. The trunk held Thomas's work bag, coveralls, cleaning supplies, a thermos that still held coffee residue, and something else. Tucked under the spare tire, a manila envelope Thomas had hidden. Inside, newspaper clippings about missing persons cases, notes in Thomas's handwriting, and a letter that began, "If anything happens to me." Maya's hands shook as she read. Eleanor can never know what I found out. I should go to the police, but it's Marcus. How do I tell them my best friend is dangerous? How do I destroy everything Eleanor believes about the person she trusts? I need more proof. I need to be absolutely certain before I ruin a life, maybe 2 lives if Eleanor's heart breaks from this truth. The letter ended mid-sentence, as if Thomas had been interrupted. Clipped to it, a photograph of Marcus Chen standing in the Boise High School parking lot late at night, talking to a teenage boy. Another photo, Marcus's car parked near the location where a runaway teen had last been seen in July 1989. Thomas's note, "Following him. Can't believe what I'm seeing. Third time this month. Need more evidence. Can't be what I think. Please don't let it be what I think. Maya felt ice in her stomach. She called the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. I need help with a cold case that might be connected to unsolved disappearances in 1989 Idaho. Patterns in the darkness. The FBI agent who flew out was named Sarah Wheeler, and she'd spent 20 years studying predators who hid in plain sight. She spread Thomas Whitmore's photos across the conference table alongside case files from 1985-1989. 7 boys disappeared from the Boise area in those years, Sarah said. Ages 14 to 17, runaways mostly, kids from troubled homes, the kind nobody searched too hard for. The pattern stopped in August 1989, right when your custodian vanished. Maya felt sick. Marcus Chen was a biology teacher, access to students, trusted position. Let me show you something. Sarah pulled up more photos. 3 of these boys were last seen near Boise High School. One was photographed in the background of a school event, and here, partially visible in the crowd, is your friend Marcus. The evidence wove together like Thomas's tiny watch gears, precise, intricate, damning. Thomas figured it out, Maya said. He was documenting Marcus, building a case. And Marcus found out. The ultimate betrayal, his best friend discovering his secret. He couldn't let Thomas expose him, destroy the perfect cover he'd built. The community pillar, the devoted friend. So he killed Thomas and hid the body, then positioned himself as the grieving best friend, the helper, the rock, stayed close to control the narrative. Sarah nodded. It's a classic pattern. Insert yourself into the investigation, appear cooperative, helpful, hide in plain sight. For 33 years, they brought in a cadaver dog to search Marcus Chen's property. He'd owned the same house since 1984, a modest bungalow with a large backyard that backed onto woods. The dog alerted within 20 minutes. When the truth wears a familiar face. They arrested Marcus Chen on a Wednesday morning while he was watering Eleanor's garden. He'd let himself in with the key she'd given him decades ago, wearing the same gentle smile he always wore. I don't understand, he said, confusion perfect. What's this about? Thomas Whitmore, Maya said, and 7 missing boys. We found his letter, Marcus. We know he was following you. We know what he discovered. For just a moment, maybe 2 seconds, Marcus Chen's mask slipped. Maya saw something cold and calculating flicker across his face, something that had been hidden for 33 years. Then the confusion returned, but it was too late. I want a lawyer, Marcus said quietly. They found Thomas's remains in Marcus's backyard, buried deep, wrapped in plastic that had barely degraded. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. Quick, efficient, final. They also found evidence of the missing boys. Not bodies. Marcus had been more careful with them, disposing of remains in the vast Idaho wilderness. But he'd kept trophies, photographs, small personal items, a locked room in his basement that told the story of a predator who'd operated undetected for years. Until Thomas, with his watchmaker's eye for detail, had noticed patterns, had followed, had documented, had been too good a man to ignore evil, even when it wore his best friend's face. Maya was the one who had to tell Eleanor. She drove to the Fairview Avenue house on a Thursday afternoon. The garden Marcus had just watered looked beautiful in the sunlight, flowers blooming in the space where he'd hidden his secrets. Eleanor saw Maya's face and sat down before being told. No, she said. Not Marcus. Please not Marcus. I'm so sorry. He was at the hospital when Rebecca was born. He held my hand when I cried. He's been my family for 33 years. I know. How could... Eleanor's voice broke completely. How could someone be two things? How could he murder Thomas and then comfort me? How could he love Rebecca while being a monster? I don't know. I don't think we'll ever really understand people who can do both. Eleanor rocked back and forth, keening. Not just for Thomas. She'd been mourning Thomas for decades. But for Marcus, too. For the friend she'd loved who'd never existed. For the father figure Rebecca had trusted. For every moment of the last 33 years that had been a lie. Did he kill Thomas because the boys... She couldn't say it. Thomas found out. He was building evidence. Marcus had to silence him. So Thomas died being good, being brave, being the man I loved. Eleanor's eyes were dry now, past tears. And Marcus has been here, in our lives, pretending to mourn him, when he was the reason. She couldn't finish. Rebecca caught the first flight from Seattle. Maya met her at Eleanor's house, where mother and daughter held each other like shipwreck survivors. He called me every month, Rebecca whispered. Told me stories about Dad. Made me love a father I never knew. And the whole time... He killed your father, Eleanor said. He killed Thomas, and then lived in the space Thomas left behind. Rebecca pulled away, her face transforming with rage. I want to testify. I want to tell the court what it's like to love someone who murdered your father, to trust someone who destroyed your family, to call someone uncle who was actually your father's killer. I want everyone to know. You'll get your chance, Maya promised. He's not hiding anymore. The trial of a double life. Marcus Chen's trial began 14 months later, in the fall of 2023. The courtroom was packed. Families of the missing boys, Thomas's supporters, curious observers who couldn't quite believe that the gentle teacher had harbored such darkness. Marcus sat at the defense table looking older, diminished. His lawyer argued that the letter was inconclusive, that the evidence was circumstantial, that Marcus had been Thomas's friend and deserved the benefit of doubt. But the prosecution built its case like Thomas had built his watches, piece by piece, precise and irrefutable. They presented Thomas's photographs and notes, the letter, the forensic evidence from Marcus's home. DNA from Thomas's remains matched the buried bones. DNA from the trophies matched 3 of the missing boys, the ones whose families had kept hairbrushes, baby teeth, anything with their child's genetic material, hoping for 30 years that they'd need it someday. Eleanor testified first. She wore Thomas's wedding ring on a chain around her neck, the gold band he'd been wearing when he died, found with his remains. Marcus Chen sat with me in the hospital when Rebecca was born, Eleanor told the jury, her voice steady. He held my hand while I cried for my husband. He brought birthday cakes every year for the daughter of the man he'd murdered. He looked me in the eyes for 33 years and lied. The defense attorney objected. Inflammatory. Sustained, the judge said, but the jury had heard. Rebecca testified next, and her testimony broke the courtroom. I wrote Father's Day cards to a dead man based on stories from his killer, she said. I loved Uncle Marcus. I trusted him with my grief. He knew my father in ways I never could, and that made me love him more. He weaponized my loss. He turned my grief into a tool to control the narrative, to stay close, to watch and make sure no one ever suspected. She looked directly at Marcus. You took my father's life. Then you took his memory and made it yours. You've been wearing my grief like a costume for my entire existence. Marcus stared at the table, jaw tight. The medical examiner testified about Thomas's skull fracture. A single blow, probably from behind, quick and brutal. The victim likely never saw it coming. He trusted whoever killed him. The FBI agent testified about the pattern of missing boys, about predators who hide in institutional roles, about the perfect cover of being a devoted friend to the victim's family. But it was the forensic psychologist who explained Marcus Chen in a way that made the jury lean forward. Mr. Chen exhibited a sophisticated form of compartmentalization, she said. He genuinely cared for Eleanor and Rebecca, in his way. They were part of his cover story, yes, but also his redemption narrative. By caring for Thomas's family, he could tell himself he wasn't entirely evil. The grief counselor, the supportive uncle, these weren't just masks. They were who Marcus needed to be to live with who Marcus actually was. So he believed his own lie? The prosecutor asked. He needed to believe it. The alternative was confronting what he'd done, not just to Thomas, but to those boys. As long as he was Uncle Marcus, beloved and trusted, he didn't have to be Marcus Chen, predator and murderer. On cross-examination, Marcus's lawyer asked, "Isn't it possible he genuinely loved Thomas's family, that his care was real?" Love and murder can coexist in the same person, the psychologist said. That's what makes cases like this so devastating. The people Marcus hurt loved someone who was partially real and partially a complete fabrication. Grief becomes more complicated when you mourn both the victim and the person who killed them. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder of Thomas Whitmore. Second-degree murder of 3 boys whose remains provided DNA evidence, and conspiracy charges related to the other missing boys. When the verdict was read, Marcus Chen showed no emotion. But in the gallery, Eleanor Whitmore wept, not tears of relief, but something more complicated. She was crying for Thomas, yes, but also for Marcus, for the friend she'd loved who'd never existed, for 33 years of memories now poisoned. "Is it okay that I'm sad for him too?" Eleanor whispered to Rebecca. "Is that wrong?" "I don't know what's okay anymore," Rebecca answered. "I just know we're finally free to feel everything." Sentencing. The weight of decades. At sentencing 2 months later, the judge allowed victim impact statements. Families of the missing boys spoke first. Mothers who'd waited 35 years. Fathers who'd searched until they couldn't walk anymore. Siblings who'd grown up in the shadow of absence. "My son David was 16 when Marcus Chen killed him," one mother said. "I'm 68 now. I've spent more of my life waiting for David than I spent raising him. That's what this man stole, not just my son's future, but my entire life's joy." Eleanor spoke last, her statement brief. "Marcus Chen killed my husband, infiltrated our lives, and turned our grief into his alibi. But Thomas won. He documented the truth. He was brave enough to follow evil even when it wore a familiar face. My husband's last act was trying to protect children. That's who Thomas was. That's who I'll remember." Rebecca didn't speak. She'd said everything at trial. Marcus's own statement was brief, flat, careful. "I'm sorry for the pain I've caused." Nothing specific, no admission of the boys. Just enough to satisfy the court without giving prosecutors more ammunition. The judge sentenced him to life without parole for Thomas's murder, plus consecutive sentences for the boys. "You won't die free," the judge said. "That's the only justice we can provide." In the gallery, Maya Patel felt the familiar ache of cases that end with both relief and grief. Justice served wasn't the same as peace restored. The families had answers now, but answers were cold comfort after decades of hoping for something else. Burial, finally. They buried Thomas Whitmore on a Saturday in October 2023, 34 years after his death. The funeral Eleanor had been unable to hold because there'd been no body, no certainty, no closure. Now there was. Thomas's casket was closed. 34 years of burial had left little to see. But Rebecca had placed items inside. A repaired watch set to 11:47, the time he'd disappeared. Photos of Rebecca through the years, so her father could see how she'd grown. A letter from Eleanor that no one else would ever read. The service was held at the same church where Thomas and Eleanor had married in 1972. The pastor, now ancient, remembered Thomas as a man who fixed broken things, who believed in second chances, who left this world too soon. Rebecca delivered the eulogy, her voice strong. My father was murdered by someone he trusted, someone he loved. Marcus Chen stole 34 years of my father's life and 33 years of mine. I've never known a world with Thomas Whitmore in it. But DNA doesn't make a father. Memory does. Stories do. Love does. She looked at the casket. Dad fixed broken watches because he believed every moment mattered, that time shouldn't be wasted. The irony is that Marcus stole all his time. But what Marcus didn't understand is that time isn't just chronological. It's emotional. My father has been present my entire life through his absence, through the stories, through the void he left behind that shaped who I became. I'm a journalist because I needed to tell untold stories. I investigate because I need the truth. I fight for the forgotten because I was raised by a woman who never forgot. Dad's been teaching me for 33 years, and I didn't even know him. Rebecca's voice broke. I wish I had known him. I wish I'd felt his arms, heard his laugh, watched him repair broken things with those patient hands, but I know his heart. Mom showed me his heart, and his heart was good. That's what I'm carrying forward. Eleanor stood at the gravesite long after everyone else had left, one hand on the casket, saying a goodbye that was 34 years overdue. I kept your workshop ready, she whispered. I kept your space in the world, waiting for you to come home. Now I know you can't. Now I can let you rest. She pressed her palm against the wood. But I won't let you go completely. You're in Rebecca, in her stubbornness, her kindness, her need to fix broken things. You're in the watches I still find on park benches sometimes. You're in every person who believes that goodness matters, even when it costs everything. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for documenting the truth even when it was your best friend. Thank you for being good until the very end. She walked back to the car where Rebecca waited. They held hands. What happens now? Rebecca asked. We live, Eleanor said. We remember him right. We tell his true story, and maybe we clear out the workshop, not to forget him, but to prove that we're not frozen anymore. Uncle Marcus, I can't call him that anymore. He wanted us frozen. He needed us stuck in 1989. But we're not. We're here. We survived. They drove home through autumn leaves the color of fire, the color of endings, the color of things burning down to reveal truth. Maya Patel visited Eleanor and Rebecca 6 months after the burial. Spring had come to Boise, and Thomas's workshop had been transformed into a reading room, his tools donated to a vocational school, his workbench now a desk where Rebecca wrote. I'm telling his story, Rebecca said, showing Maya her laptop screen. Not the crime. Everyone knows that now. The story of who he actually was, the watches he repaired, the students he helped, the way he loved, the kind of man who'd risk everything to stop evil, even when evil wore a familiar face. Eleanor brought tea, and they sat in what had once been Thomas's space. I found more of his watch notes, Eleanor said. He wrote philosophical things sometimes. Listen to this. Time is the only thing we truly give each other. When you spend time with someone, you're giving them a piece of your life you'll never get back. Make it count. He made it count, Maya said. His last hours were spent trying to save kids he didn't even know. That's who Thomas was. Marcus took his time, but he couldn't take his legacy, Rebecca said. Dad's still teaching people, through his story, through what he did. The FBI agent said they're reopening cold cases in other states, looking for patterns similar to Marcus's. Dad's documentation methods are being used as a training example. He'd love that, Eleanor said, smiling through tears. Being useful, fixing broken things. Maya left Boise that afternoon, driving past Boise High School where Thomas had worked, past the park where he'd left watches on benches. She stopped at one bench and found a watch there, placed recently, running perfectly, with a note. Time still matters. Someone loves you. She didn't know who'd left it. Maybe someone who'd heard Thomas's story. Maybe Rebecca. Maybe just another person who believed in small kindnesses. Maya placed the watch in her pocket. She'd repair it herself, she decided. Learn how. Then leave it somewhere for someone else to find. Thomas Whitmore's legacy wasn't in how he died. It was in how he lived, believing that broken things could be fixed, that every moment mattered, that goodness was worth fighting for even when it cost everything. Marcus Chen would die in prison, his name synonymous with betrayal and evil. But Thomas would live forever in the people he'd taught to care, to notice, to fix what was broken. In the grand mathematics of love and loss, Thomas had won. Epilogue. The Mother's Peace. Eleanor Whitmore died peacefully in her sleep in 2028, 5 years after Thomas's burial. She was 74. Rebecca found her mother in bed, Thomas's wedding ring still on the chain around her neck, a letter in her hand that she'd written but never sent. Rebecca read it at Eleanor's funeral. My dear Thomas, I'm tired now. Tired of carrying this grief. Tired of pretending I'm not angry you left me. Tired of being the widow who waited. But I need you to know, I would have waited forever. That's what love is. Choosing to wait, to hope, to believe that the person was worth every moment of absence. You were worth it. Marcus tried to steal you from me, but he failed. You've been in every sunrise I woke to, every birthday Rebecca celebrated, every difficult choice I made. I parented with you, even though you weren't here. I asked, what would Thomas do? And then I'd do it. Rebecca turned out beautiful, kind like you, stubborn like you, believes in fixing broken things like you. She's writing your story, and it's a good story, Thomas. Not because of how you died. That's Marcus's story. Because of how you lived. Because you were good until the very end. I'm ready now. Ready to stop being the waiting wife. Ready to just be Eleanor, who was lucky enough to love Thomas Whitmore and be loved by him. See you soon, my love. Save me a dance. Forever yours, Eleanor. Rebecca buried the letter with her mother, along with Thomas's wedding ring. Both her parents were finally at rest, side by side, together again after 39 years apart. On both headstones, Rebecca had engraved the same line. Time spent loving you was time well spent. That evening, she placed a repaired watch on a park bench in Boise. The note read, Time still matters. They loved you. Now go love someone else. A stranger found it the next morning. She put it on, smiled, and decided to call her mother, whom she hadn't spoken to in years. Small kindnesses. Ripples. Thomas Whitmore's last gift to the world. The reminder that every moment matters, that goodness is contagious, that love, Even love interrupted by violence never truly dies. It just keeps ticking forward, like a repaired watch, counting the seconds of other people's lives, measuring out the time we have left to be kind.